Golf Central on YouTube is brought to you by the new Paradigm Woods and Irons from Callaway.
Welcome to this Golf Central update. I'm Whit Watson. Round one of the Scottish Open today. In his first comment since the congressional meeting earlier this week, Rory McIlroy continued to voice his feelings on LIV Golf and the Public Investment Fund, telling reporters after his round if LIV Golf was the last place to play golf on earth, I would retire. That's how I feel about it. I'd play the majors, but I'd be pretty comfortable. Joined on Golf Central by Rex Hoggard. And Rex, it seems like Rory McIlroy hasn't changed his tune much on LIV Golf after those hearings on Tuesday.
Wait, he was responding specifically to questions from reporters today about the idea that if you go back to Tuesday's hearing with the U.S. Senate, there were documents that the PGA Tour handed over. Part of those documents were essentially a proposal from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, sort of lining up what could happen if they could come to some sort of agreement. Part of that proposal was the idea that both Tiger Woods and Rory were going to become team captains of LIV Golf teams and maybe play in 10 events. And you can tell by that statement, he clearly has no interest whatsoever in that. And he had plenty else to say today after he finished up his round here at the Scottish Open. He also sort of addressed the idea of what players got into earlier this week. Jordan Spieth, Xander Schauffele both talked about the idea that they've lost trust with both the PGA Tour and the commissioner, Jay Monahan, because of the way this has been handled, the way the agreement was handled in secrecy and kind of the way it's been rolled out. Now, Rory pointed out that he's one of the few people in the world that at least knew these conversations were going on, and he wasn't quite as surprised when it was announced publicly as the rest of us probably were. But he said he understands where that frustration and where that lack of trust comes from the other players.
It was reported today that the Tour and the PIF have dropped a provision in their framework agreement wherein they promised not to recruit each other's players. And there was a statement issued by the Tour. We'll get to that a little bit later. What can you tell us about that decision to change the language of that framework agreement?
I spoke with a source at the PGA Tour, and essentially they turned the agreement over to the Department of Justice very, very early in this process. This goes back more than a year. The DOJ has been investigating the PGA Tour over possible antitrust concerns, and this was the one clause, and it's called the non-solicitation clause. Essentially, what this means is that neither tour can poach the other's players anymore, like LIV Golf has been doing to the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour for the last year. Now, according to that source, this was the only clause that the DOJ had a problem with, at least as of right now. And he also told me that the PGA Tour's lawyers had a high degree of confidence that this particular clause would hold up to antitrust scrutiny if they wanted to push the subject. But I think both parties were pretty comfortable with the idea of just dropping it. And go back to those documents that I just referenced from the Senate hearing earlier this week. Part of those documents was the framework agreement as it went through the process, as they negotiated back and forth. There were numerous versions of this. And from the earliest versions, this clause was in those documents, in that agreement. So you get an idea of how important this was, really, to both sides. And it's also important to point out that as we get down the road, and if we get to some sort of definitive agreement, which we're still a long ways away from, that this really wouldn't be a relevant clause because all of the for-profit assets from the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and LIV Golf would be housed essentially in one shop under one roof, which means they would not be competitors. So right now, it really doesn't matter if that clause goes away.
And that is Rex Hoggard reporting from Scotland on Golf Central. Let's take a look at that statement from the PGA Tour that was issued after this news was reported earlier today. The framework agreement sets the stage for an exciting future for professional golf that reestablishes competition at the highest levels of the sport and creates the biggest stage for everyone, players, sponsors, and fans. Based on discussions with staff at the Department of Justice, we chose to remove specific language from the framework agreement. While we believe the language is lawful, we also consider it unnecessary in the spirit of cooperation and because all parties are negotiating in good faith. A look at the leaderboard at the Scottish Open. Ben on with a 61. That is his best score of the season. He also ties a course record. Davis Riley with a 63, and there is Rory McIlroy with a 64 today. Max Homa with a large group at 4 under 66. Whit Watson, Johnson Wagner with you. Let's talk about Rory McIlroy a little bit, a guy that hasn't been playing a lot of golf lately. His last competitive round was at the Travelers, and that was by design. He wanted to step back, rest, didn't even play a lot of practice rounds heading into this week, and off to a great start.
Well, I mean, these guys have been playing so much golf with all the designated events, and they have designated events following a bunch of majors. It's been a tough schedule for them to get used to, not really being able to plan it. But one thing I've noticed about Rory, especially these last few weeks, is that he's coming out of the gates putting hot like he did today at the Scottish Open. He's 19th in the field strokes gained. So it's a real trend, as you see here at the RBC Canadian Open, U.S. Open. First round great, second round great, and then it starts tapering off. And I think when he gets to that fourth round, he just loses his aggressiveness on the greens. Today you saw it. He made 124 feet of putts. And when he does that, look out field, because his ball striking is prolific. He's, third in strokes gained off the tee this year, which is a place he's very comfortable being. And I just think he needs to keep the pace up. I think he runs out of that pace on Sunday and doesn't want to leave himself that 5-footer coming back. But you make a lot more putts when you're aggressive.
What do you think his favorability rating is going to be the week after the Scottish Open, heading into the Open Championship?
I think he has rested. I think he's going to go in this week, obviously wanting to win, but preparing for next week and getting used to the links golf, the weather conditions, the firmness of the ground. I think he's going to be in a great spot to go defend his 2014 Open Championship title from, his last major he won at Hoylake, Royal Liverpool. I think he's in good form. That U.S. Open was really positive, and other than a little bit of a weak putter on Sunday, he was right there.
A U.S. amateur champion is on top of this leaderboard, Ben On, and what a round he put out there for round number 1 at this Genesis Scottish Open. 61. Look at that string of birdies at 13, 14, 15, and 16. Not a single bogey to be seen on this scorecard. 30-31. And his best round of the season by 2 shots. How did he get it done?
He got it done with ball striking. He also made a lot of putts, too, including one at the last. But back in 2021, Ben On, leading into that 2021 season, was kind of peaking in his career. He switches coaches to get better, like we all do, Sean Foley, and he gained 20 yards per club. Got ball speed with his driver up into the 180s, so he made these massive jumps, but then fell off the planet. Went back to the Corn Ferry Tour, got his card back, and this year he's back to that Ben On that's kind of climbing up towards the top. And the only thing missing from his resume is a win. But let's look at it. Rookie year back in 2017 was 102nd in the FedEx Cup. It is basically climbing every year until that swing change where he gained a bunch of distance. Sean Foley even said that the results just didn't match. But I think it takes a lot for a guy to go back down to the Corn Ferry Tour, finish 13th on that points list. He's back out on tour this year, and he is picking up right where he left off just 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, look at that little update. Not just his best of the season, but his best in his PGA Tour career. And to back up for 1 second, we may have misspoke. Rory McIlroy's last major victory was at the PGA Championship. We may have misplaced the one coming up with the one that's already happened. What about Ben On going into round number 2? How do you follow a score like a 61?
Well, they say that it's hard to back up a low score. He went out early, so he's going to be last off tomorrow in the afternoon. The wind picked up today. If it picks up again tomorrow, we'll see if that ball striking pays off. He's hitting it far, he's hitting it straight, but Ben On is not known as one of the greatest putters on tour. Has never really been inside even the top 140 in strokes gained on the green. So the wind makes it even harder. So he's going to have to rely on that ball striking.
It is a busy Friday on Golf Channel. Second round of the Genesis Scottish Open, getting things started. 8:30 a.m. The coverage begins. The Colleague Companies Championship. That is a senior major. The Barbasol Championship on the PGA Tour in Kentucky. Golf Central back at 7. LPGA coverage at 7:30, and the American Century Championship, the opening round starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A busy Friday coming up on Golf Channel.